All right. Welcome back, my regular viewers, listeners, and watchers. And of course, if you happen to be here for the very first time, welcome. Before I go any further, my name is Rahul George, India's premier iHypnosis life healer coach and your personal guide. And of course, for all of you who are tuning in to our very special curated podcast, the iHypnosis Life Coaching Journeys, you know that this is a very special journey that we curate every single time. We find guests not only from all across our country, but now, in fact, I must say this now for the very first time, we are reaching out overseas and we have a really special guest in our midst. And with that, of course, this is your cue, Helen. You can turn on your camera. And as I welcome you in, firstly, it's such a pleasure to have you here on our pod. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is such an honor to be on your show. Thank you for the invitation.
Awesome. Thank you, Helen. And as I said, we've been now doing this for a while, and we've had some amazing guests from across the country. And it's just time and place that you are our very first international across the pond guest from across the pond, and it's really um, I'm really excited to hear more about your story and the things that you do, making this world a better place. So maybe we'll start there. And if someone said, "So Helen, what do you do?" What's
Oh, how much time do you have?
all the
is
time?
is usually my response. By the way, first of all, I feel very honored to be your very first overseas guest. So thank you so much for that.
Thank
In
you.
terms of what I do, well, I tend to wear many hats, as most of
Mm,
us actually do. But the main thing that I do is I am an integrative holistic health practitioner
mm,
and well-being mentor. So I currently am based in the UK.
mm,
I do work internationally online. I have clients from all over the world, from all different walks of life.
mm,
And the main thing that I do is I actually write holistic health protocols
mm.
that are based on just natural supplements and using food as medicine.
Nice.
And of course, it helps to really understand the physiology of the
Mm,
disease and the health condition that
mm.
you are dealing with.
Right.
So, just by using very simple protocols and natural health
Mm,
supplements,
mm.
I am able to help my clients actually overcome a number of very
Thank-
serious diseases and
Wow.
ill conditions that they may have been told that they could never overcome. Diabetes is just one of many of those health conditions that I actually help my clients with. And I also help children
Mm-hmm.
from an emotional perspective when children are having very unexplained, let's say, mental health conditions. Even though I don't
Mm,
like that word mental health, it has a certain connotation to it that it isn't quite nice. But let's just say emotional disorders
mm,
and such as anxiety or
mm,
depression, and especially when they come on very suddenly, it's usually because they are having some form of memory that
mm,
cannot really be resolved by just taking, seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a
mm,
counselor. It runs, what I find with my work with children and adults in these circumstances is that the issue runs much deeper
mm,
than, you know, just treating a symptom.
mm,
So, what I tend to do when I'm doing emotional healing work is I take a deep dive into things like Akashic records and
mm,
generational traumas that
Mm.
they may be carrying. I look at, childhood traumas from both sides of their
Mm.
lineage, the mother's and father's side. And so that's how I managed to track down what the issue is. But
Mm.
much of the time when I'm in session with all of my clients, whether they come to me for holistic health protocols or, we're working on something emotional that is
Mm.
potentially sabotaging a part of their lives, regardless of, what we're working on, it's always, it always amazes me that it all stems from our past. There's a lot of
Mm.
past life traumas that then go on to lead to um, conditions of ill health in the body, things like diabetes, things like
Mm.
cancers. And, when we talk about breast cancers in particular as well, just for instance, every single disease has a metaphysical reason behind it.
Mm.
So, for the people that perhaps don't quite grasp what I'm saying here, is that disease just doesn't manifest out of nowhere in the body.
Mm.
It's usually because your body has been giving you signs, signals, and symptoms for a very long time. But, we're so conditioned to having pain and inflammation and just accepting it, um, by age. And with all
Mm.
the conditioning from the media, by the time a woman reaches this age, she's going into the menopause. By the time you get to that age, you're supposed to retire. And so there's a lot of social conditioning around our ill health conditions. But
Mm.
also, on top of that, there is the epigenetic expressions of what
Mm.
we are experiencing. And Dr. Bruce Lipton talks a lot about epigenetics. He's done quite a lot of work around
Mm.
this. And for people that really don't grasp what epigenetics is, it's essentially the environment in which you are raised. So, for instance, you hear people talking about certain illnesses and diseases running in the
Mm.
family. And what that is, at the very basic of that, is that they have followed a specific lifestyle,
Mm.
routine,
Mm.
and dietary intake as their ancestors, or throughout generations. Nothing has really changed there. So for instance, if somebody comes from a family where they eat a lot of junk food, and you
Mm.
know generation after generation, that is all that's happening,
Mm.
then of course, if cancer then runs in the family, there's a very good reason for that, because we all know that
Mm.
you know these fast foods actually contain
Mm.
chemicals that are harmful to the body, and are therefore likely to mutate our
Mm.
genes and
Right.
activate cancer cells. I mean, we
Mm.
all carry cancer cells, but
Yeah.
not all of them have to be activated, right?
Mm.
And so this is what is then known as an epigenetic expression. It's really the result of the environment and the conditioning that and the dietary intake that you have
Mm.
followed for generations and generations. So the moment
Mm.
that you break that and choose to do things differently, you can stop those generational diseases in the family.
Mm.
So, as I was saying before, when it comes to breast cancer, now what I have found in a lot of my clients is that um, the women that have presented with breast cancer, it's usually because they have put themselves last in whether it's the relationships, or and that can be the relationship with themselves, their
Mm.
spouse, their family, their colleagues. So you'll usually find that it's quite prevalent amongst women who are nice, and
Mm.
I air quote for a reason, because it's great to be nice, but it's also good to
Mm.
put really healthy boundaries in place and not burn yourself out when you are, showing up for your family, your
Mm.
friends, your spouse, your children. And what I find is that there's a certain number of people that are just not very good at putting those boundaries in place.
Mm,
And so when we are constantly giving to other people and forgetting to have time for ourselves, to reset, to breathe, to meditate, to ground ourselves, and just recharge, we are very often exposing ourselves to genetic mutations
mm,
at a cellular and molecular level, which then often leads to disease and ill condition in the body.
right.
So there is always a reason why we are getting diseases in the
Mm,
body and conditions of ill health. They don't just come out of nowhere. And that's
mm.
just, a few of the examples that I could give.
Yeah, yeah,
There are so many more examples I could give,
yeah.
but it would be
In,
a very long show.
in fact, if I may, it seems just by listening to, that's why I didn't want to interrupt, just by listening to the journey that you've been on to get to this point where, you've really immersed yourself in your work. Um, One of the things that I always like to understand is, as someone who's a healer, someone who's a coach, like how did you get here? So maybe if you could, share with us what's your story like, because you're obviously very passionate. You're obviously, on a mission. You really want to make a difference in the world. And
Yeah.
just by listening to you, I know, and it's almost like mirror neurons. I know that this didn't start overnight. So there was obviously a journey that got you here. So, one of the hallmarks of this podcast is that we always like to travel with our guests through
Yeah.
time, and really like, sort of like, seeing it through your eyes and ears, or being there by your side as you know found yourself, so to speak, over a period of time, so that today this is who you are, that shows up and does the work that you do. So maybe if you could take us back in time, and you can go as far back as you feel drawn to, and share with us, like, how did you find this? Because today we talk a lot about purpose, we talk a lot about passion. Of course, is something that we've been talking about for maybe the last decade or so, but purpose is something that has become a lot more prevalent, especially post COVID. A lot more people are talking about, living on purpose, finding your purpose. So I'd love to hear your story, and how did all of this come together?
Thank you. Great question. And I'm actually attempting to figure out how to keep a very long story short, but I will do my very best. And you just happened to touch on COVID there, and
Mm-hmm.
how people actually had a change of mindset and started
Mm,
to seek out, other ways of healing the body. And I just feel that, there's no such thing as a bad thing in life.
yeah, yeah.
I feel that everything that happens for a very good reason. So, yeah. So, anyway, to get into the origins of my story. So, I was born in East Africa, in Uganda,
Mm,
in a place called Ginger. And when I was born, about 2 weeks later, I actually contracted apparently some very strange form of German measles. And
wow.
because I was born in a clinic, um, I then had to be transferred to a major hospital, which was Ginger Hospital in Uganda, because if I hadn't have been transferred, according to the doctor that helped to deliver me, then I basically would have died.
Mm,
So, and the difference between, health and life in Uganda
mm,
is money, because now I live in the UK. We have an
mm,
NHS here, we have a free medical system, and
mm,
sometimes I don't know that people appreciate that as much as they really
mm,
should. At times, it's great for some things and not so great for others. But anyway,
mm,
I digress. So, so yes. So then I've actually had I spent 6 months in intensive care. And there's a reason I'm telling you this, because I have a kind of love and hate relationship with medicine, Western medicine, and the medical world. But I have a lot of, friends and relatives who actually happen to be doctors and
Mm.
clinicians and everything
Mm.
else. So, whilst I do appreciate the system for some things, I feel like when it comes to the long term care, it
Mm.
should always come back down to holistics. In a triage situation, yes, we need emergency help. Um, so I do have a bit of a, a journey with Western medicine, even though it saved my life. Um,
Mm.
as a baby. So I've had both a primary and secondary school education in both countries, Uganda and the UK,
Mm.
which was
Mm.
very strange and very bizarre. I came over to the UK when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
And so during my years as a child, bouncing back and forth, Uganda, UK,
Mm.
I was living with my auntie and uncle,
Mm.
and I think they had like 6 or 5 kids at the time, and I was just an addition. And during our very long summer holidays, I
Mm.
remember my aunt and uncle used to take all the children to the village, and we would help out our grandparents in our
Mm.
village of Buyukwe, which is near Jinja. And, we had animals. My grandparents had animals, every kind of animal: ducks, chickens,
Mm.
cows, goats, sheep, pigs, you name it, they had it.
Mm.
And so we also had a farm, and we were very much accustomed to being woken up around 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to
Mm.
go digging with grandparents and, harvesting. And as a
Mm.
result of that, there's probably pretty much nothing that I don't know how to plant and
Mm.
harvest. And,
Right.
also when it comes to preparing, animals from fresh, there was a lot of knowledge picked up from that.
Mm.
So, when we were coming back from either digging or harvesting, my grandparents, my grandmother in particular,
Mm.
she would often show me all of the, medicinal herbs and
Mm.
tell me what they treated, how to
Right.
prepare them,
Mm.
and, all types of different herbs and spices on our journey back from the farmland back to the house.
Mm.
And,
Mm.
as an 8-year-old, I remember thinking, I am 8 years old. Why do I need this information again? So, um, so one of the other things that my grandmother taught me to actually do is to interpret my dreams.
Mm.
And
Wow.
I very much feel that it went beyond that, because I feel that she passed on a lot of ancestral spiritual wisdom. It wasn't just about the herbs and spices that she was showing me how to prepare for ill health conditions. And the reason
Mm.
I say that is because she did teach me how to interpret my dreams. And so one night, I'm 8 years old, I'm in the
Mm.
city, and I have this dream of my auntie, and I am in this big church, and I am standing at the altar,
Mm.
and it's a really big church, and then the doors, I'm facing the front doors of the church, really big doors, and they suddenly burst open, and there's so much light that comes in. And then
Mm.
suddenly, I see my auntie, and she's wearing a wedding dress, and she's
Mm.
floating towards me, not walking. And I immediately got scared in the dream, and I woke up. The closer she was
Mm.
getting to me, the more scared I was getting. So I woke up in a sweat, and I remember thinking, my auntie has just passed away.
Mm.
Because of the way my grandmother taught me how to interpret my dreams. And so I just really did not say anything to anybody. And I was having that dream around about 3 in the morning.
Mm.
And, those days we did not have telephones in the house or anything like
Mm.
that. So my cousin, one of my cousins was sent over to say, Auntie such and such, passed away. She
Wow.
transitioned last night around 3 a.m. And I remember quietly freaking out. I really could not say anything
Right.
to anybody because
Mm,
we were still living in the dark ages where, women were being, put in mental health institutions
mm,
for talking about anything
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And
Mm,
this is something that I kept to myself for a very long time, but
mm,
it reoccurred over and over and over again,
mm,
whereby very close family members would actually come to me in my dreams to say goodbye just as
wow.
they were transitioning. So, three of my grandparents did
Mm,
so. My eldest brother came to me in a dream to say goodbye.
wow.
And so, it just kind of went on and on. And I just could not talk about it for a very long time. I think I was probably in my late 30s when I eventually opened up to my mother about it. And I honestly thought that she was going to freak out, and
Mm,
but she was absolutely fine. And I recall her very words were, "I always knew that you were very special."
wow.
And honestly, that just I just wanted to cry in that moment.
Mm,
So that's how I actually realized that, hey, I must be a psychic intuitive. And
mm,
it actually really comes in handy during all of my sessions, whereby
right.
when I'm sitting in a session with clients, I have
Mm,
the third eye vision. So I will often be shown something that the client needs to know about,
mm,
because often people come to me, they present with symptoms. And of course, whether it's holistic health protocols or
mm,
emotional well-being protocols, I am always given, a vision of what is going on beyond the symptoms
mm,
that they are displaying.
mm,
And so my just to double back a little bit. So
mhm,
after that very first dream where I saw my aunt transitioning
mm,
and I'd never said anything for many years, I also never really did anything with what the knowledge that my grandmother actually, you know,
mm,
gave me in terms of
right.
all the herbs and, you know,
Mm,
protocols and stuff, because I just didn't think I needed it. So instead, I chose to do what many of us have done
mm,
on this journey, which is focus on making money, having a great lifestyle, luxury cars, luxury
mm,
homes, all of that good stuff, because that's how we are conditioned in
mm,
school. That is the epitome of success. Now,
mm,
I now know differently
mm,
from that. That is the epitome of ill
right.
health if you're not
Mm,
balancing it out. I'm not saying that it's such a bad thing to
mm,
be wealthy and have luxuries in your life,
right.
but remember to balance it out. And that is one thing that I really did not do at the time.
Mm,
I had I think at the age of 27, 28, I started my own business, and it was
mm,
a luxury apartment concierge business
nice.
where I was
Mm,
recruiting my own staff, training them, and actually placing them in five-star luxury
mm,
apartments
right.
around Manchester city centre.
Mm,
And my clients were Countryside Properties PLC, who were a real big deal, and still are in terms of property developers here in the UK.
mm,
And, life was great. I had all these luxuries around me, but I was working every single hour God sent. And I would be that person that would wake up first thing in the morning just to read all the fax reports from my concierge staff to make sure
mm,
that if there was ever anything that had gone wrong overnight, I could fix
mm,
it before my clients even woke up and realized that
mm,
there had been an issue. Now multiply that by 5 different sites
wow.
across Manchester and Sheffield.
Mm,
That's quite a lot to handle.
right.
And I was also handling the HR, the training,
Mm,
pretty much everything in
mm,
house. And during this, I had acquired an ill health condition at a very early age,
mm,
whereby, like many girls nowadays, I started menstruating and I started my menses at the age of 9. And right
mm,
from the beginning, it was just very heavy, very painful, very
mm,
debilitating. There will be times where I couldn't go to school. And
mm,
so, over a period of time, that just got worse. It turned into endometriosis, and
mm.
endometriosis turned into fibroids. And the
Right.
only answer that doctors could give me was um, the usual pills that they were giving
Mm,
every woman that was, experiencing these types of
mm,
conditions. And when those did not work, I became a guinea pig,
mm,
and I was taking all types of experimental medications, because I just wanted this thing gone. I
mm,
wanted my life back. And it just got to the point, cutting a very long story short, whereby I ended up having 4 operations
wow.
to remove fibroids. And with every operation that I had, I was told that they would never grow back again. But with every
Mm,
operation that I had, I discovered that was not true. They grew back more viciously.
wow.
It got to the final point where my stomach resembled a 6 month pregnancy, and I was housebound. I had to stop
Mm,
working. I couldn't leave the house. I was severely anemic,
mm,
just really debilitated. So I remember just after New Year's, one day I collapsed on the bathroom floor. And, my mother had to come to the house, called an ambulance, got me into hospital, woke up to my doctor, my consultant saying, "I'm really sorry you're going through this, but we really don't have any other option now other than to go in with the knife, scalpel, and
mm,
basically remove your womb, your uterus." And
mm,
I just, in a heartbeat, I just remember thinking, I just want this condition gone. So do whatever you have to.
right.
But when I woke up from that operation, the first thing I remember doing is just really being tearful. I cried and cried and cried in the recovery room, knowing exactly what I had just done to myself,
Mm,
and realizing that how many other women are going through this.
mm,
And I almost had a vision of my grandmother
mm,
come through saying, "Go back to holistics, go back to what I
wow.
taught you." And so I went back to what she had taught me, but I also realized, okay, there must be so much more to it than just, the holistic side of things. So
Mm,
I basically, when I went home, I shut myself down from the world for
mm,
absolute months where I just did not talk to people. I spent a lot of time in research, and then, I developed all of these modalities. I
mm,
wrote a protocol for heavy periods, fibroids, and endometriosis, because
mm,
I did not want any other woman to go through what I went through. And that
mm,
was really the turning point of my life. I had also just had to fold my concierge business because the
mm,
property market was taking a downturn at the time.
mm,
And so, everything seemed to be in divine timing, even
mm,
though at the time it just did not feel like,
yeah,
this was divine
right,
timing. And this
right.
is why I say to people that no matter what you are going through at
Mm,
the time, everything that you are going through is actually happening for a very good reason. Just
mm,
trust and, find a way to find the lessons in
mm,
every challenge and every adversity that you are going through,
mm,
because there is a lesson in there for all of us. And it's not until you do that and you learn those lessons that you start to move through those lessons, so
mm,
that you do not have to repeat the same cycles
right.
and patterns of behavior.
Mm,
So and then I set up Venus Health Academy, originally set up to help women because of what I had gone through. But of
mm,
course, now I am seeing male clients as well.
mm,
And I've actually recently rebranded Venus Health Academy so that the logo is much more kinder to my male clients, because it was originally a figure of a lady. And,
Right.
I had to put myself in the position of my male clients and think, well, if I'm receiving a protocol with a logo of a lady on it, how would
Yeah.
I feel?
Right.
So yeah, that's
Mm.
how I got
Wow.
it.
Beautiful. That's, I mean, as I said, when you started sharing that, you obviously have been through a lot, and you've been able to absorb it in a way that you have become the person that you are today, and doing the kind of work that you're doing today. So, so Helen, in your journey, uh, as you mentioned, you work with people. One, you talked about creating protocols. You also talked about energy. You talked about the akashic records as well. Um, Maybe briefly, if you can also talk about how uh, what were some of these, let's say, nudges that you got along the way to skill yourself, because one, as you said, from the earliest memories, you've had this in you, and there was a period of time that it's like sometimes when we are on this journey, we do not recognize our gifts, and then life has a funny way of it's like knocking on the door the first time, the second time, the fifth time, the seventh time, and then finally you go, okay, I get it now. And we kind of start to recognize those gifts, and it definitely sounds like that was kind of when you decided, when everything came together, from the market to your business to then sort of skilling yourself in the work that you're doing. If you could walk us through what were some of those, some of those, I'm sure you must have done many different programs or come across many, but some of those that stand out the most for you, maybe the highlights. It could be the, like the really bright spots, or the ones where you're like, okay, I went in thinking, this is going to be the one, but it didn't turn out to be. Doesn't matter. I mean, you can choose what you want to, shed light on, but basically, it's like, what were some of these, um, processes, or some of these skills that you learned along the way, which you've been now honing, over these last so many years.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as you were going through all of that, I was thinking, oh my God, yes, I've done a lot of training, both in the metaphysical sciences and outside of that as well, in the
Mm-hmm.
medical world too. Um, so yeah, what really stands out for me is the very first person I came across on my journey was Dr. Wayne Dyer,
Mm.
because I
Okay.
wanted to really understand how
Mm-hmm.
I had created this disease in my body. I was
Mm.
really looking for answers that were, you know, answers that would hold me accountable to every step of my journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came across Wayne Dyer and absolutely loved his work. It made a
Mm.
lot of sense to me. And then the next person I came across was Sadhguru.
Mm.
And
Okay.
basically, I actually ended up going to Sadhguru's ashram after seven
Mm.
years of
Wow.
following him on social media. And
Mm.
because, I'm not one of these people that will just jump into something like
Mm.
that. I want to
Mm.
sit back, observe. If I'm not very sure about the coach or the mentor, I want to sit back and observe for a while. So it took me 7 years before I actually traveled to
Mm.
Coimbatore in India, and I did yoga training with Sadhguru and sat in on his satsangs, and it
Mm.
was quite a good retreat
Mm.
because I did his inner engineering as well
Mm.
training.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next person I found was Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Mm.
And so, what Bruce Lipton taught me was everything I spoke about when it came to epigenetics and,
Mm.
sorry, how your environment actually really shapes
Mm.
your mental health and physical conditioning and how that impacts it as well. So, it started to show me, highlight areas in my life where I needed to take accountability
Mm.
for the things that I had chosen to do and the path that I had chosen to go down that then led to my ill health.
Mm.
Um, so it really made me understand my environment a whole lot better than I had
Mm.
before. And then I discovered Deepak Chopra and Greg
Mm.
Braden. And, so there were a lot of people that I came across. I
Mm.
also came across Dr. Bradley Nelson, and
Okay.
I did Dr. Bradley Nelson's emotion code training.
Mm.
um, who else? There was another piece of training that I did. I've just done so many training sessions. I'm
Yeah.
also a conscious birthing doula, but
Mm.
I support women from a digital perspective. So I'm not a physical birthing doula because my busy schedule does not allow for
Mm.
that. So I, support them online instead. Um, I have done hypnosis. I'm actually currently enrolled on the holistic sciences
Mm.
bachelor's degree at the Quantum University in Honolulu, Hawaii. So
Mm.
when I do graduate, I'll be traveling over to Hawaii for my
Nice.
graduation, and I'm just
Nice.
really excited and looking forward to that. I've
Mm.
trained in the biology of belief because that
Mm.
is actually a module on the bachelor's degree at the moment. I have trained in auricular therapy.
Mm.
I have trained in acupressure. And, so there's, by the time I finish the degree, there is a whole host of, different
Mm. Right.
modalities. I would say at
Mm.
least 13 different modalities, including
Mm.
biofeedback,
Right.
that I will have trained in. So I've
Mm.
also come across the works of people like Dr. John DeVore in Texas.
Mm.
He had a really good method that I incorporate part of that method, not all of it. So I've also come across tapping, and I've done that, and I incorporate it into, the work that
Mm.
I do. I incorporate affirmations, I incorporate
Mm.
meditations, um, and much of it really comes through my psychic, intuitive
Mm.
abilities really help to guide me to better guide my clients in terms of what
Mm.
they are dealing with that they can't, foresee
Right.
on the surface. So I'm given everything beyond the surface. And they are often surprised when I mention
Mm.
something and they say, "Whoa, how did you know that?" And I say, "Well, when I turn up for a session, I'm turning up to hold space for you, and
Yeah.
I hold space for whatever downloads need
Yeah.
to come
Yeah.
through in
Yeah.
order to help you with whatever
Mm.
you've got going on."
Right.
And so, yeah, there's just a whole
Mm.
bunch of things. And more recently, I
Mm.
have actually discovered the work of Dr. Karen Curry Parker. Now,
Mm.
I'm sure many people in the audience will be familiar with human design, the work of
Mm.
um, human design and their human design chart. Well, what Dr. Karen Curry Parker has done, she has taken the work of human design to a whole nother level, because it now also incorporates Vedic astrology
Mm.
and just a whole bunch of other things that the traditional human design doesn't actually do. In fact, I am interviewing her for my show Live
Nice.
Stories
Mm.
next week, which will be really, I'm absolutely honored to be doing that, and I'm looking forward
Mm.
to bringing her work to
Mm.
the surface because I
Mm.
realize a lot of people are still not aware of quantum human design. So, yeah, there's just been a whole bunch of
Right.
modalities.
Right.
So, I do use some of
Mm.
Dr. Bradley Nelson's emotion code in my practice, but I only use a fraction of that by way of identifying where in the organs we are actually holding a certain
Mm.
emotion or emotions that we are dealing with, because a
Mm.
lot of the times the emotions that we are dealing with, especially if they are persistent, are usually
Mm.
embedded somewhere in our organs or somewhere in
Right.
our bodies. So, for
Mm.
instance, you know, some people who are having persistent and prolonged kidney issues,
Mm.
the kidney is where we tend to carry anger, the emotions of
Mm.
anger. So it's a case of asking yourself, who is it? Are you still angry with? And,
Mm.
or what situation or environment are you
Right.
still angry with? And,
Mm.
everything is a process of forgiveness, whether it's forgiveness for yourself or,
Mm.
the environment or other people. We cannot heal without that element of forgiveness
Mm.
in the mix.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I'm actually thinking whether there's anything else I've missed out. I'm sure there will be
Of
something
course.
that I've missed
Mm.
out somewhere.
Right.
I'm also trained in naturopathy, so
Mm.
naturopathic medicine, and it's just a whole bunch
Mm.
of
Right.
training. Um, has anything really stood out for me? Yes. Dr. Bradley Nelson's emotion code stood out for me.
Mm.
But I just seem to take it to another level with my own additions
Mm.
to
Yeah.
that. I also learned to muscle test. So for people in the audience that don't know what muscle testing is, it's basically referred to, the scientific terminology of it is kinesthetic muscle
Mm.
testing. And it is based on the galvanic skin response,
Mm.
which is the mechanism by which the traditional lie detector is
Mm.
based on.
Mm.
So, just to simply explain that, is whenever we tell a lie, it actually weakens our energy field and it weakens the
Mm.
body. So, whenever you tell the truth and you are your true, authentic self, it
Mm.
strengthens your body. One of the
Mm.
reasons that Dr. Gabor Mate often says authenticity heals, because if
Mm.
you're constantly telling lies, all you're doing is you're weakening your body. So when I'm in session with a client, because the majority of my sessions actually are remote, I barely ever see
Mm.
anybody in person. So there are different ways that you can muscle test, and I always use that method because it works very well for me.
Mm.
And so when I use that method, if my fingers stick, if it's a
Mm.
negative, my fingers will stick. And if it's a positive, they will be smooth. Now, why does that happen? It's because when we tell a lie, it stresses the body's
Mm.
response.
Yep.
And because of that, it triggers the body to secrete a fluid known as the galvanic skin response will come up to the surface of the skin. And
Mm.
so when that happens, your fingers will stick. And so this is when I know that, okay, this is the truth, this is false, or this is a positive, that's a negative, or
Mm.
whatever we are muscle testing for at the time. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes you can completely misfire. And I
Mm.
do teach muscle testing for anybody that is interested in, getting to learn more about it.
Mm.
And there are various things that you can actually do in order to recalibrate the body so that you
Mm.
are now actually muscle
Right.
testing
Mm.
from a more balanced state.
Right.
So, yeah, those things really stand out for me in my training, in
Mm.
really getting to connect with the body. And also, I have read books on DMT. I have
Mm.
read books on how to induce DMT
Mm.
from within our own pharmacy, within the body's own
Yeah.
pharmacy, because I always tell people that the body has a natural pharmacy. And if we were eating clean, living clean, we are actually giving the body a chance and an opportunity
Mm.
to trigger, you know, and release all of the hormones, all of the nutrients that we actually need. And people are often quite surprised that your body actually has its own pharmacy. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of knowing how to tap into that. And one of
Mm.
the fastest ways of tapping into your body's own innate pharmacy is actually through intermittent fasting and
Mm.
water fasting.
Right. Wow. It's, I mean, it's amazing how you have found yourself drawn to so many of these, modalities, so many of these ways of really going deep, and that's probably a podcast in itself. But let me ask you this, because I know for our audience who are primarily healers and coaches, something has changed the world over, especially if you look at the world post COVID.
Mhm.
And I speak also from not just in an international context, but even in India specifically. There are a lot of people who have realized that maybe they were hurting and they needed to heal. And so, in these last 5 years, people have started to not just focus on the healing aspect, but in that journey or along that way, there is a segment of people that have recognized that they're meant to do something more than just their jobs for which they had been studying the traditional route, right? Whether it was to be an engineer or a doctor or computer scientist or a programmer. Like, these are like the very, as cliches go, these are the very conventional paths that have been adopted, and India is no different in that. Having said that, now in these last over these last 5 years, there are a lot of people that have recognized that they do have this innate ability to be able to help other people, to be able to guide other people. So the reason why I'm setting this up for you is I'd love to get your take on, it's as one can tell that you're really passionate about learning, and you've immersed yourself in so many of these um, you know areas of research and application. But there's another side to this, which is the business side of things, right? So I'd love to get your take on how have you adapted to or adopted the business side of things, whether it is digital, because like you said, you are mainly, when you say remote, basically you operate on Zoom or a similar platform, and you don't necessarily see every client in person, right? So I'm sure that took a certain getting used to over these last 5 years. And so I'd love to hear your story of how you have adapted, and also what is your take on, let's say, marketing or digital marketing, because these are things that especially people who are more, I'm a healer, I only want to heal, but there is the business side of things, and unless both go hand in hand, it can be its own story. So I won't say too much for now. I'm just watching your expression and your reaction. I'm curious to hear, what has your journey been, especially over these last 5 years, Helen?
Okay, so for me, I guess, unlike others that started off their businesses by seeing people in person and then
Mm.
had to adapt when COVID hit,
Mm.
uh, for me, there were no changes because when I set up my business, I set it up in the way that I wanted to be able to work from anywhere in the world.
Mm.
So I did not want to be, stuck in any one location. I
Mm.
am a traveler.
Mm.
I love
Nice.
traveling. I love going to other places in the world and interacting with other cultures.
Mm.
So, having spent time in the corporate world, not just working for myself in my own business in the concierge, but after that, I did
Mm.
some time in the corporate world where I was an associate operations director
Mm.
for a quite a large construction company and property developers in Manchester. Um, so I had that corporate background already, but having
Mm.
experienced that, I also knew that I no longer wanted to tie myself to any one given location. Hence, I call myself a cosmic gypsy.
Nice.
Because not only do I travel here on Earth,
Mm.
but I travel to other places in the
Right.
ether and in my
Right.
dreams, and how that goes. Um, So really for me, COVID didn't make a great amount of
Mm.
difference to my work and how I deliver my services to my clients. Um, it just made it easier, I guess, because
Mm.
now, you had more people who were
Yeah.
willing to, well, I say willing, I think more
Mm.
people were actually forced
Yeah.
into taking a lot of IT courses and learning to use Zoom,
Mm.
StreamYard, and, all the other
Mm.
sort of platforms, video
Right.
platforms out there that would enable you to have, conferences for work
Mm.
and one-to-one coaching and tuition with clients.
Mm.
See, I already had those skills because, and that stemmed really from when I had my concierge business. And
Mm.
I remember paying a lot of money for a company that was to do my website, basically all
Right.
of my branding.
Mm.
Um, and no matter how much time we spent together discussing the brief and
Mm.
what I wanted, the final look, I was just getting back things that they wanted. It was completely different from the brief that I had given them. So I found that journey quite painful and a very expensive exercise. And then, on top of that, when I wanted to make changes to, let's say, my website, I would have to
Mm.
wait weeks and sometimes months to make the most simplest of changes. So
Mm.
I eventually decided to take matters into my own hands.
Right.
And I decided to teach myself how to use all of these different platforms out there
Mm.
for building your own website and all the website templates and
Mm.
graphic design, designing my own business cards, leaflets, flyers, advertisements, and my own websites. And I've pretty much come across every single
Mhm.
website template out there at
Nice.
the moment. And I'm familiar with how to
Right.
use them all because I have
Mm.
changed that many times to the point where I was, okay, now I've found something that I am very comfortable with and I'm going to stick
Right.
with. So I already had a lot of all these skill sets and I already
Mm.
knew how to use many of
Mhm.
the IT resources and software that I required to deliver the coaching that I do. Um, and I really feel for the coaches out there that were really thrown into the deep
Yeah.
end when COVID hit, because at the end of the day, as coaches, and practitioners, we're very good at what we do. And that's all we
Mm.
want to do. We don't want
Yeah.
to, suddenly become experts in IT, marketing, social media, and, having to find all of the software that would actually make it easier for us to do that.
Mm. Mm.
So I have seen a lot of coaches who have really struggled with that
Mm.
whole COVID transition over the past 5 years. But and I guess the good thing is, at least now that they've been through that, they are more savvy about
Mm.
what tools
True.
to use for their businesses.
Right.
Um, so yeah, when it comes to marketing, I have done online marketing before. I started a small marketing company online,
Mm.
and I was
Nice.
helping businesses with their online marketing, basically as a consultant. And I ended
Mm.
up working in the yachting industry as an online marketing consultant, and then later on as an interior designer. Um,
Right.
because at some point in my life, I was also a fashion designer. So I've
Wow.
done quite a number of
Mm.
things over a period of time. So the whole online marketing was, again, not very, it wasn't a strange phenomena for
Mm.
me to actually really get, to grips with.
Right.
So really that
Mm.
whole transition, it was easy for me. I
Mm.
didn't really have any challenges. I suppose the one challenge I did have was because suddenly you've got um, almost the world's population online. We were
Mm.
having issues with, internet blackouts and bandwidth issues, and I
Right.
suppose that's a challenge that many of us actually experienced
Mm.
during they were COVID times, so to
Mm,
speak.
mm.
I hope I've managed to
Awesome.
answer
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
question.
Like the purpose of me asking this question is, um, we don't know exactly who's going to be watching this and when, but I believe that, even if they hear, even if it's one phrase that you said, that sometimes can be the key that can turn it for them. Because, as you very rightly said, especially when it comes to healing and coaching to an extent, especially healing, people just want to do what they want to do because they feel so aligned to something that's spiritual, something that's connected to their their oneness. And marketing, branding, asking for money, funnels, these are all things that literally almost are, it's like the antithesis to everything that they really want to do. And I've seen coaches and healers suffer from that. I've had my own experiences over time. And so my intention is that even if someone hears your story in this context, especially if it just gives them the belief that, okay, I will be able to overcome this, or yeah, maybe now let me start paying attention. uh, I believe that even if it's not right now, it's like over the next 5 years, 10 years, it's going to make a big difference in their life. Because the healing, the act of healing, or the process of healing for them is not going to stop. It's very rare that someone says, "Oh, I don't want to be a healer anymore." It's just so intrinsic that they literally would be doing this for the next several decades. So even if they're starting today, at the time of this recording or at the time when they're watching this, if this even moves the needle for them, just that 1 degree, that's good enough. Because ultimately, as you said, when you started talking about this, that they're not intending to become experts in digital marketing, right? There are outliers. Like you said, you had your own agency, so you may not be sort of like, like, there's that very famous bell curve where you have two ends of the spectrum. One is you have the Jedi Master, and one is you have sort of like the village idiot, right? And then you have everybody else in the middle. So even if like you, from what you're saying, you definitely are in that Jedi Master category. But even if there's one little piece that they've taken away by listening to you sharing this, as I said, even if it just gives them that hope that, what, yeah, I've also struggled with maybe the designer who's not done this, so like maybe now I should make it a priority. I think that itself is the lesson that's been received. So as I said, I mean, I'm kind of expanding on this because there's a, like, I know why these podcasts happen.
Yeah.
And I believe that sometimes just hearing that from a different person can shift and make that shift for them, because the work itself is obviously really, really important. And it really shifts things generationally. It's not just the person coming to you for health or whatever help that they're looking for, but they change and their entire families, and literally generations to come will change. So this work that you're doing is not just limited to only the person that's coming to you. So maybe in a nutshell, if you could, Helen, just give us a sense. I know you talked about many different modalities, but just for someone to understand, typically when someone comes to you, what happens? And the reason also I'm asking you to share this is because we don't know who's watching this and from which part of the world, but at least this gives them an idea of what to look forward to in sort of like the bird's eye view, or like fly on the wall, that okay, what happens in Helen's session. And obviously we your links will be shared so people can reach out and get to know you better, get to follow you on all the various social handles. And if there's something that they feel they feel drawn to you, that yes, Helen, maybe Helen can help me, this would sort of be like that starting point for them.
Okay. Thank you for that. uh, so typically when people come to me, they tend to be in what I like to describe as the 11th hour.
Mm.
So at this stage, they have tried everything. They've gone down the Western medical route
Mm.
because they have been taught that, that traditionally, well, not even traditionally. That's the wrong word to use. Traditional medicine is natural medicine.
Right.
Um, so systemically, should I say,
Mm.
systemically, they have been told that, that's the best route for them.
Mm.
And of course, I empathize because I've been there. When you don't know any better,
Mm.
you just simply don't know any
Correct.
better.
Correct.
So, as an integrative holistic health practitioner, what tends to happen is that I see people in their 11th hour, um, and the process of actually getting to a consultation with me often involves, a 15-minute discovery
Mm.
chat. So we can actually establish that, number one, I can actually help you.
Mm.
Um, to date, there hasn't been anything I haven't been able to resolve.
Mm.
So, but, most importantly, I want to make sure that you are ready for the help, because there are a number of people that do approach me. And during that 15-minute discovery call, I actually discover that this person is just really not ready for whatever reason. So
Mm.
I'm not one of these coaches that is just going to take your money just for the sake of it. If I can really see that you
Mm.
are just not ready, I'm going to ask you to, do a number of things and then, just reconsider your position and where you are.
Mm.
So, because a lot of people come to me in the 11th hour, they are normally on, let's say, synthesized medications.
Mm.
And the majority of people I work with are actually wanting help to either reduce the amount of
Mm.
medication that they are taking,
Right.
or to safely be able to completely eradicate those medications so that
Mm.
they can, live a more holistic lifestyle and
Mm.
dietary intake as well. So that's really mostly what I see in my practice. And then the other flip side of that is, somebody has somebody has watched a TikTok video somewhere or something on social media, because this is where most people get their health
Right.
guidance and advice from.
Mm.
Um, Somebody has watched something about a supplement and they have
Mm.
gone out and bought that supplement or several different supplements, and they don't know how to, put them all together into a protocol that
Mm.
actually is going to be helpful to their health and well-being journey.
Mm.
So I can also guide people through their protocol in terms of the supplements that they already have in their kitchen cupboard, bathroom, or
Mm.
wherever they keep these. And usually, when somebody comes to me with something that they have been dealing with for a long time, in order to manage their expectations, I always say, hey, just be prepared to, number one, put the work in, because
Mm.
the protocols that I write absolutely work. The only way
Mm.
they don't work is if you don't do the protocol, right?
Mm.
And that can sound really arrogant, but I have been doing this for absolute years. So I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I've
Mm.
perfected those protocols for each specific, not just the disease type or ill condition, but also, the reason I prefer to work one on one with people and
Mm.
write personalized health protocols is because we are all different.
Mm.
If you see a generic protocol on social media, it may not be right for you on
Mm.
so many different levels for so many
True.
different reasons. It could
Mm.
be that, perhaps that particular supplement may contraindicate with a particular synthesized medication that you are taking. Um, and for a whole host of other reasons that I won't go
Mm.
into. I mean, that's
Mm.
usually the main reason.
Right.
That protocol or that supplement may not be right for you. And I know that more recently, within the past 2 weeks, I have started putting out generic protocols on my website But with that,
Mm.
I do offer some consultation so I can guide you through
Right.
it.
Mm.
So that, which is something that, other people that are putting these protocols out are not doing. I would feel
Mm.
highly irresponsible if I was putting out a genetic protocol without, sorry, a generic protocol, not genetic,
Mm. Mm.
without, actually incorporating some form of consultation so I can
Mm.
figure out, are you on any medications? And I can help you pinpoint the best way to do the protocol
Mm.
for the outcome that you actually want. So usually people that work with me have a range of coaching packages that they can
Mm.
choose from. If you're just wanting some simple guidance, you can either go for a half-hour consultation
Mm.
or a 1-hour consultation, but that neither one of those come with, let's say, a written protocol. You have to take all your own notes. Um,
Mm.
and then I do a other protocols which are um, 3 weeks. Sorry, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and 6 weeks, something like that.
Mm.
Um, it's all on my website anyway, and I'm
Sure.
sure the links will be
Mm.
provided.
Mm.
And if somebody is dealing with a long-term issue and situation, I would always guide them to go for a 6-week protocol.
Mm.
And that's because, especially if you are currently taking synthesized medications
Mm.
and you are wanting to either reduce or come
Mm.
off those medications completely,
Right.
I have to I have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that you do not rush through that because it can have contraindications or
Mm.
impact on you if you rush through that. So that's why I recommend 6 weeks plus,
Mm.
because then we have the opportunity to slowly take you off that as we are detoxifying your body. We are
Mm.
actually backfilling with the nutrients and changing your dietary intake and really aligning you to a healthy state, but in the
Mm.
safest way possible. As week by week, we reduce one medication or two
Right.
medications, depending on what medications you are taking,
Mm.
and how that's kind of likely to play out over that
Mm.
period of time.
Right.
And, usually
Mm-hmm.
I do my clients experience great results within days of starting the protocols. I get phone calls to say, hey, guess what, Helen? I have so much energy where I didn't have energy
Nice.
before. I wasn't
Mm.
sleeping properly. I was having brain fog issues. Um, I feel that, I've really matured in the delivery
Right.
and the curation of these protocols to
Mm.
the point whereby people are experiencing really quick results and really quick turnarounds
Right.
that are also long lasting because I do give a maintenance protocol
Mm.
as well. So that is really the journey. And if you've booked onto a coaching package that includes a personalized protocol, then expect to have, some catch-up calls, weekly
Mm.
catch-up calls that are actually built into that because I
Mm.
want to know how you're doing. Is there anything that you're struggling with? Do we
Mm.
need to modify your protocol so that it is more in alignment with your busy schedule or your
Mm.
lifestyle, because there are a couple of things that I really aim and are really key in my protocols. One of them is I want to make that protocol as easy as possible for you to do. The
Mm.
protocols are not meant to stress you out. I want to achieve the complete opposite. I want you to understand that, you have a cheerleader on board when you're working
Right.
with me.
Mm.
I will check in on you weekly. But then, the other side of that is that I'm very passionate about finding the right supplements for your body without having you on 10 different supplementations.
Mm.
because that's going to stress you out. You're having to be mindful of the timings of when you're taking this, when you're taking that.
Mm.
And it's just going to be too much. It won't be
Right.
much different from, the pharmaceutical meds
Mm.
or the synthesized meds that you're attempting to come off. So I've become very well adversed in finding the right nutritional supplementation that has quite a lot packed into
Mm.
it already.
Mm.
So at the very most, you'll be on, 4 or 5. I do my best to go for a minimum of around 3 or 4. But, in some circumstances, it can't be
Mm.
helped. And the maximum would be about 5 supplements that
Right.
you would need to really
Mm.
support your body and your immune system through
Mm.
a transition of, coming off the synthesized
Mm.
medications. Because, one thing people have to bear in mind when you see a supplement being advertised and it's good for you, and I'm not saying it isn't, but we are all very, very different. Yes, we all look the same, we all look similar, but we all have different lifestyles, we all have
Mm.
different things going on. And one thing people need to realize that sometimes the supplements that you're taking are cleaning out your body and
Right.
detoxing your body
Mm.
at a really rapid rate. So you need to know how to really um, make sure that you are supplementing well so that
Mm.
you don't end up with something known as a Herxheimer reaction, otherwise
Mm.
known as a healing crisis. Now, what is a healing crisis? A healing crisis is whereby your body's getting rid of so many toxins so rapidly that it actually thinks that you're dying.
Mm.
So your
Wow.
immune system is, it comes up to protect you. And
Mm.
in protecting you, it's likely to give you something that resembles the flu. So you might feel very nasally.
Right.
You might experience sore throat, aching joints, and everything that is associated with the flu, stomach ache or headaches.
Mm.
And so, what I do on any detoxification protocol, because that's all of the protocols are based on
Mm-hmm.
that, usually a
Mm-hmm.
very gentle detoxification that you don't even realize that's what you're going
Mm.
through. I make sure that you don't experience a Herxheimer reaction.
Mm. Wow. Amazing. I
So,
must
hope
say it's no,
hopefully
absolutely.
I've
It's
answered your question.
I no, I was just gonna say it's been a really deep dive into the work that you do, and as I said, the protocols itself is like its own podcast. But this was just let's call it part one for now, but just as a way for people to get to know you, and the reason also why the idea of doing these podcasts came to me was that you know because there's so much of information out there, a lot of times we don't really get to know too much about the people who, or let's put it like this, we trust people who we get to know better. So this podcast has been designed with this very clear intention of letting people know your story, letting people know why you do what you do, and eventually people, you know and this is universal, eventually we decide based on our gut. But doing the podcast is one more way for people to be more informed. And as I said, it's been more than informative. And one question, of course, before we go, as I start to wrap or land the plane, as they say, but is there maybe one question that is like, I wish you had asked me that question? Is something that comes to mind where that would help people know something that's close to you? If that, like, let me say it again, like, is there a question that you would, oh yeah, I'm so glad he asked that question? What would that question be, Helen?
So, if there was a question that I would have wanted you to ask me,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been how are the majority of diseases actually accumulated in the body?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like in a lot of people, this is a missing link, a huge
Mm.
missing link. So, beyond what I already talked about, I would really like to address the issue of
Mm-hmm.
parasites.
Mm.
And there is now more and more research coming to the surface that is identifying or linking a lot of the diseases in the body with parasites.
Mm.
Everything from brain degenerative diseases
Mm.
to gut health and skin health and endocrine health, you name it.
Mm.
At the very basis of that is an overload of parasites. Now, I
Mm.
know that there are a lot of people out there that really don't want to hear that they have
Mm.
parasites in their bodies,
Mm.
but I just want to um, bring to your awareness that if you have never had a parasite cleanse and you eat red meat or eat
Mm.
meat full stop, um, you eat fast foods or you've ever eaten fast foods, processed foods,
Mm.
dairy products that were not organic. I could go on and on and on. If you
Mm.
have a sweet tooth, if you eat chocolates and unnatural sugars, the list is very long.
Mm.
You have accumulated parasites in your gut and in your intestinal tract. And, in different parts of your body as well, your eyes, macular degeneration, a lot of that is linked to parasites. Your ears, people that are suffering from tinnitus,
Mm.
it's usually like parasites in the ears. And I know it sounds really gross and disgusting. Um, and the thing is that people have been misled into thinking that parasites are just, these long worms that are visible
Mm.
to the eye. And the fact is that there are hundreds and thousands of parasites out there. Not all of them are bad for you, by the way, because we
Mm.
do have some parasites that are good for our gut and
Mm.
they help us to, mop up those toxins that we need to get rid
Mm.
of. But there are certain parasites that are really, really bad. And one of them is H. pylori, which the majority of the populations worldwide has H. pylori. If you've ever suffered from ulcers, if you've lost appetite, there's just a whole bunch
Mm.
of physical symptoms that are actually linked to parasites and
Mm.
H. pylori in particular. And that's not the only one. There are a number of them, but that would be a parasite show in itself if I had to go into that. But I just really want to take a moment just to let people know and share with people that parasites in the body are a real thing. You can reverse a lot of the diseases that you're being told you
Mm.
can't. I've done a lot of this in my clients, and a personal journey, if I may share, was with my grandfather who lived in the village in Uganda
Mm.
about 5, 6 years ago now. He had his second stroke and nobody could find him. They were looking
Oh.
for him everywhere. It turns out he'd gone into his house, locked himself away, and he collapsed on the floor. And when they found him, he was out, cold, unconscious,
Wow.
but he was bleeding from the head. So I got the phone call to say, Helen, what do we do? And I said, immediately take him to the nearest clinic that you can. Ask them to do a scan because I'm suspecting an aneurysm on the brain.
Mm.
And they did that, and the local clinic did not have the resources to do
Mm.
the full spectrum tests. So they basically sent him to a major hospital in Kampala. They did all the tests. They found an aneurysm on the brain. And because of his age, he was 84 years old at the time. And also, the location of the aneurysm in his
Mm.
brain meant that they could not operate on him because they risked losing him on the
Mm.
operating table. So they released him with some medication at home. He had lost all the nerve endings on the left side of his body. As you can
Wow.
imagine, the majority of stroke victims often lose nerve endings
Mm.
on the left side. He could no longer recognize his family members, so he had lost long term memory. He could not eat. He needed assistance with toileting, bathing, dressing, everything, walking, as you can imagine. And my grandfather was a very,
Mm.
very proud man. So they basically gave him some medications and released him to go home to die. They expected him to die in a a couple of weeks, days, or whatever. So my aunt rang me and she said, "Hey, um, we've got granddad here, and he's not eating, and he's lost so much weight. I know you can help him." At this stage, I had never dealt with a live brain, trauma before. And so, and this is my grandfather. Obviously, I want the very best for him.
Right.
So, anyway, I wrote a protocol. I sent it to my aunt and I said, "Do not stray from this protocol." The first thing I said is take him off all of the medications that he is in. I have looked into them and they are all designed to give him a very slow death. So, she did that. She followed the protocol. Within days, my grandfather had regained his appetite and he was eating well. And basically, to put a long story short, within 4 months, he was back on his farm
Wow.
looking after his pigs and all his other animals. He regained consciousness, so he knew who all the family members were. He
Wow.
regained his speech. We reconnected all the nerve endings on the left side of his
Amazing.
body. And to look at him, you wouldn't know that he had had a stroke and was near death. But at the very core, the reason I bring that example up, at the very core of that protocol and at the core of most of my protocols is a very gentle detox of parasites. And how I combine the herbs and the supplements with that is very important. It's absolutely key. And all the protocols are time specific as well.
Right.
Um, so again, parasites, we had to detox the parasites in order to give him a chance of recovery. Um, we went on to have 5 more years with my grandfather,
Wow.
and he only recently passed, I think it was last year, because I was not able to look after him. Protocols I was sending were not being implemented, and so I had lost that connection. But otherwise, it's very possible to reverse disease.
Beautiful. Wow, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing that personal story, and just it's beautiful. And just the way that you've shown up today and shared so much, Helen. It's as I said at the beginning, my intention was for someone who's listening to this to be moved, to be drawn, to not only get to know you better, but also to reconnect with what they are doing. And I'm sure in many ways that has happened. And in the months and the years to follow, there'll be these stories where someone says, Helen, I don't know if you know this, but I happen to have seen this video of you, and something that you said just moved me. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for sharing your story and your life, and all the things that you do. And most importantly, thank you for being here on this show.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, it was an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here. And especially, I'm your first international guest, so I really love that. And, equally, I just want to say thank you to you as well for actually, showing up and holding space for people like myself, because, um, you know, traditionally, people that do what I do have always been in the background and
Yes.
not really being encouraged to come forward and speak about their journey and speak about their healing modalities and how they do it and what's their story. So I'm very, very grateful to you that you have this podcast and you are helping people like myself to actually
Thank
get
you.
our voices out there. I totally honor that. So thank you.
Thank you. And of course, special mention to Neeta for connecting us,
Yes.
because this is again, life is funny like this. You never know how connections are made, and I'm sure at some point Neeta will watch this. So, Neeta, if you're listening to this or you're seeing this, big thank you to connecting the two of us, and wish you the best on your journey. And yeah,
Yeah.
for folks who are, you know, you're you're here at this point watching, obviously this means that you've connected with Helen and her story and what she does. So as I said earlier, links are shared, so definitely reach out, follow her on Insta, reach out to her. Her website links are also shared, so different ways in which you can stay connected. And also, the fact that you've been listening to this means that you know that you are special and you're meant to be doing this work. So just keep doing it. And as I always like to remind, not just our guests, but also whoever's watching this, especially as a healer and a coach, remember to live your purpose. Thank you once again, Helen, and bless you and wish you in all that you're doing and all, the adventures ahead. And thank you once again for being on our podcast, the iHypnosys Life Coaching Journeys. And of course, we'll be back with many, many more. We are constantly looking out for amazing guests, people who are doing some really, really important work, making this world a better place. And, more so now than ever before, healing is something that is so vital. So wish you, Helen, and those of you watching, wish you the very best. And as always, remember to live your purpose. God bless, and of course, we'll be back with more. So Helen, if you can just stick around for a moment, I'll just pause the feeds.
Yeah.
Okay,